1910s. Baseball in the 1910s belonged to a force of nature who turned chaos into opportunity every time the ball was put in play. Pitchers feared him because the moment he made contact, the entire field had to panic. Even legends like Shoeless Joe Jackson struggled to stay in his orbit statistically, despite posting a .356 average. The star of this decade routinely pushed toward 400, stole bases at a rate that overwhelmed defenses, and controlled the game with an intensity that reshaped how opponents prepared. His 96 steals in 1915 set a standard for aggression, and his 9 batting titles during the decade created a gap no one else could close. He mastered bunts, line drives, and psychological warfare, often beating teams before the game even settled in. Those who watched him play insisted that he changed the rhythm of baseball itself, turning each at-bat into a test of survival. Only after years of tormenting opponents did the league realize they were witnessing the rise of Ty Cobb, a player so dominant that nearly half of his career wins above replacement came from this single decade. And what happened in the next era would shift baseball from precision to pure power as the sport transformed again. 1920s. The 1920s opened with baseball desperate for a spark, and what arrived was someone who could hit the ball farther than the entire league believed possible. Pitchers like Walter Johnson remained elite, and stars such as Rogers Hornsby posted absurd averages, including a .424 season. But even they could not match the spectacle of the mysterious slugger who stepped into stadiums and sent crowds into a frenzy with each towering swing. In 1920, he blasted 54 home runs, more than entire teams managed, and followed with seasons of 59 and 60, numbers the sport had never imagined. His 1322 OPS in 1920 remains one of the greatest single-season performances ever recorded. Fans flooded ballparks just to watch him take batting practice, and newspapers wrote about him as if he were a myth brought to life. His presence changed strategies, defensive alignments, and even the dimensions of stadiums as owners chased the excitement he generated. Only after he turned the Yankees into a dynasty did the world accept that Babe Ruth was not just a great player, but the architect of modern baseball. And yet, the next decade would introduce a teammate whose steady brilliance rivaled even the power of the Sultan of SWAT. 1930s. The 1930s were filled with extraordinary talent. Jimmy Fox crushed 50 homer seasons. Hank Greenberg emerged as one of the most dangerous sluggers alive. Pitchers like Lefty Grove dominated lineups with pinpoint command. Yet hidden within this crowded landscape was a player whose value came from something far rarer than raw power. He played every day, never missed a moment, and produced at a pace that made consistency look supernatural. His 1.167 OPS for the decade showed how relentless he truly was, and he averaged 140 runs batted in per year while anchoring the most feared lineup in baseball. In 1934, he delivered a legendary Triple Crown season by hitting .363 with 49 home runs and 165 runs batted in. His durability became legend when he recorded 2,130 consecutive games, a streak that defined the spirit of the era. The league eventually realized that the quiet cornerstone of the Yankees had become one of the most impactful players in history. That steady force was Lou Gehrig, a player whose greatness was measured not only by how high he soared, but by how long he stayed at the top. And the next decade would see an artist of hitting elevate skill to a new dimension. 1940s. The 1940s were a turbulent era that interrupted careers and changed rosters across baseball. Even so, stars like Joe DiMaggio produced dazzling stretches, including his 56-game hitting streak in 1941, and Stan Musial dominated with a .376 season. But the player who ultimately towered over the decade did something no one has repeated since. He hit 400 in 1941 and finished at .406, a number that stands untouched more than 80 years later. His ability to track pitches was so razor sharp that teammates swore he could read the ball's rotation mid-flight. He lost crucial seasons to military service, yet still returned to lead the league in on-base percentage year after year, finishing the decade with multiple MVP awards and a legacy built on precision. His unmatched understanding of swing mechanics created a standard that hitters still study today. His skill was so advanced that opposing pitchers often said he had no weaknesses, only preferences. It was only after his dominance reshaped expectations for what a pure hitter could be that the world fully recognized Ted Williams as the defining star of the decade. And as baseball entered the 1950s, a young phenomenon emerged who blended power, speed, and defense into something entirely new. 1950s. The 1950s delivered a wave of electrifying talent. Mickey Mantle burst onto the scene with tape measure home runs. Duke Snider became a Brooklyn icon. Hank Aaron launched the early stages of his record-breaking career. Yet even among these giants, one player displayed a combination of athleticism and elegance that stunned the league. He tracked fly balls like he had radar stitched into his glove, turning impossible catches into routine highlights. On offense, he delivered seasons over 100 runs batted in and hit with both consistency and authority. His five-tool mastery made him a threat in every facet of the game, and advanced metrics estimate that he accumulated more than 50 wins above replacement during the decade, a total that left his peers far behind. His speed on the bases created havoc, and his arm strength was so explosive that runners often refused to challenge him. By the time the decade ended, many believed they had seen the greatest all-around player in history. Only afterward did fans fully appreciate that the master of every skill was Willie Mays, the say hey kid who changed the standard for what an outfielder could be. And the next decade would belong to a slugger whose steady excellence dismantled record books one swing at a time. 1960s. The 1960s were defined by iconic superstars. Sandy Koufax delivered one of the most dominant pitching stretches ever recorded, including a 1.74 ERA in 1963. Bob Gibson produced the historic 1.12 ERA in 1968. Roberto Clemente became a symbol of precision and grace in the outfield. Yet through all of this brilliance, one player quietly put together a decade of unmatched production. He hit more than 350 home runs during the 1960s and rarely struck out, blending power and discipline in a way that baffled pitchers. His consistency was unreal, posting 8 straight seasons with at least 100 runs batted in and regularly finishing among the league leaders in hits and slugging percentage. Even as pitching dominated the era, his numbers held steady, proving his adaptability against the toughest arms in history. He passed milestone after milestone, inching toward a home run record many believed was unbreakable. Only when the decade closed did the baseball world admit that Hank Aaron had outperformed even its brightest stars. His calm precision masked a relentless dominance, and the 1970s would crown a player whose relentless motor and constant production turned hustle into a superpower. 1970s. The 1970s featured power hitters like Reggie Jackson and Tom Seaver's overpowering command on the mound. Johnny Bench revolutionized the catcher position by pairing thunderous power with elite defense. Yet the decade ultimately revolved around someone who did not rely on towering home runs or blistering pitch velocity. Instead, he weaponized consistency at a level the game had never witnessed. He collected hits with mechanical regularity, leading the league multiple times and finishing the decade with more than 2,000 hits. His .338 average in 1973 highlighted just how often he found ways to reach base, and his adaptability allowed him to play nearly every position on the field. He fueled the Big Red Machine with a relentless style that turned hustle into identity. Teammates claimed his energy elevated everyone around him, and opponents dreaded his ability to pressure defenses into mistakes. The league eventually realized that the player redefining durability and production was Pete Rose, the embodiment of grit and the heartbeat of Cincinnati's dynasty. And the next decade would shift to a player whose speed and swagger made baseball feel electric in a brand new way. 1980s. The 1980s introduced a thrilling collection of talent. Wade Boggs mastered the art of hitting with a .363 season in 1985. Cal Ripken Jr. began his legendary consecutive game streak. George Brett won batting titles across 3 different decades, but one player owned the era by turning the leadoff spot into a weapon of mass disruption. He stole over 1,000 bases in his career and more than 800 during this decade alone, a total that shattered expectations for what speed could accomplish. He paired that chaos with surprising power, launching 28 homers in 1986 and posting a .146 OPS plus that season. Pitchers dreaded facing him because even a walk could turn into a scoring opportunity moments later. His confidence and swagger made fans gravitate toward him, and his ability to dictate the pace of a game was unmatched. By the time the decade wrapped up, it was clear the most influential star was Rickey Henderson. His combination of patience, explosiveness, and intimidation turned baseball upside down. But first, only cool people are subscribed to this channel, so hit that subscribe button before we go any further. 1990s. The 1990s delivered power explosions from players like Frank Thomas and Jeff Bagwell, while pitchers such as Greg Maddux carved through lineups with surgical precision, posting a .156 ERA in 1994. Yet the player who defined the decade did so through aura, athleticism, and a swing so smooth it became iconic. He soared through the outfield to steal home runs, turned routine grounders into diving masterpieces, and launched tape measure homers that made crowds erupt. During the decade, he blasted more than 300 home runs, won multiple Gold Gloves, and made the All-Star game every year he stayed healthy. His popularity was unmatched, turning him into the face of baseball and a cultural icon for kids across the world. His influence stretched beyond numbers, though the numbers were astonishing. At his peak, he posted a 49 home run season paired with highlight reel defense, becoming a two-way superstar in a way few players ever achieved. Only after the decade ended did fans realize just how large his impact truly was. The legend of the 1990s was Ken Griffey Jr., whose elegance and joy made baseball feel magical, and the next era would shift from beauty to brutal dominance that rewrote the record books. 2000s. The 2000s featured superstar hitters like Albert Pujols and Alex Rodriguez, along with pitchers such as Randy Johnson, who put up a 2.48 ERA in 2002. But even in this golden age of talent, one player towered over everyone through production that looked impossible on paper. He walked so often that pitchers essentially refused to face him, recording 120 intentional walks in a single season. His .722 slugging percentage in 2001 and his .473 on base percentage in 2004 stand among the greatest numbers ever recorded. He smashed 73 home runs in 2001 and followed with seasons that still look unreal, including 45 homers paired with a .609 on base plus slugging in 2004. No hitter has ever generated this level of fear. Only after overwhelming the decade with 4 MVP awards did the league accept that no one matched Barry Bonds. His statistical dominance remains unmatched, and the sport has still not found another hitter who could warp the game so completely. And the following decade would introduce a younger star who became a modern measuring stick for all-around brilliance. 2010s. The 2010s delivered a wave of stars. Clayton Kershaw posted a .177 ERA in 2014. Miguel Cabrera won a Triple Crown in 2012. Mookie Betts produced elite seasons in Boston with power and defense. But one player pushed the boundaries of what an all-around talent could achieve from the moment he arrived. In his rookie year, he hit 30 home runs and stole 49 bases, producing a 10.8 wins above replacement season that stunned the league. Over the decade, he averaged a 1,000 OPS, regularly led the league in on-base percentage, and often finished among the leaders in home runs, walks, and stolen bases despite missing chunks of multiple seasons. Advanced metrics treated him like a modern-day unicorn, crediting him with numbers that echoed the legends of earlier eras. His ability to hit for power, get on base at elite rates, run like a sprinter, and track down balls in center field made him the defining player of the decade. Only later did fans fully appreciate that Mike Trout had built one of the greatest decade-long peaks in baseball history. 2020. The 2020s opened with power surges from sluggers like Aaron Judge, who crushed 62 home runs in 2022, and Ronald Acuna Jr., who built a 40-homer and 70-steal season that shattered expectations. Pitchers like Jacob deGrom and Corbin Burns showed what modern dominance on the mound could look like, yet one player broke the entire idea of what a baseball star is supposed to be. He launched 46 home runs in 2021, while also posting a .318 ERA and 156 strikeouts in 130 innings as a pitcher. In 2023, he led the league in home runs and OPS while carrying a sub-3 ERA before an arm injury shut down his season on the mound. He won MVP awards in both leagues, piled up double-digit pitching wins, and hit like a cleanup slugger all at once. His wins above replacement totals sometimes look like two separate all-stars mashed together, because that is effectively what he was: a top-tier hitter and an ace-level pitcher in one body. The player who transformed the 2020s into a science fiction era was Shohei Ohtani, a once-in-a-century phenomenon who made the impossible look normal. If you like this video, consider watching this next one, which YouTube thinks you are going to really love.